I would like to hand out a special warm welcome to our guest speaker, Ken Harris from FredSparks. He will be sharing his experiences and stories in fully integrating environmental performance and actually driving a new line of products that they will be putting out next year. And it's very excited to have you here, Ken. So thanks for joining us. My name is Joep Meyer, and I'm the LCA technical expert at Sustainable Minds. I'm a chemist and life cycle assessment expert by training, and I've spent most of my career in helping organizations in product development, measuring environmental performance, quantifying performance, and helping industry and organizations with standardization like ISO, ASTM, the US Green Building Council. Now, a few notes on the webinar before we dive into the content. To keep things moving and avoid confusion, we've muted all your microphones, and they will remain muted throughout the webinar. There are just too many people. That doesn't mean that we don't want your input. If you have questions and we want to make this a conversation, you can send us questions in the questions tab, and you can do that during the presentation that Ken is about to be giving, and I'll forward those questions to him. I'll make them known to him so we can sort of have a communication going on there. So if you have a question, please type it into the Send Question to Staff in the Questions tab. Now, the last thing is that we are recording this webinar for future availability. Now, with that said, we can get started. We'll introduce Ken in just a little bit, so just be patient. Ken there for a minute. We'll share his experiences in using Sustainable Minds, fully integrating it in their design practice. Like I said, ask questions when you can, and we'll see where we get into this hour. If time permits, we will be doing some additional demos, just showing how you can use Sustainable Minds in different ways, and we'll end this webinar with a Q&A with your questions. We'll follow up with you afterwards. Now, just to give you a short introduction on Sustainable Minds, what we want to do is we want to empower organizations to really capitalize on two things and combining them into making truly greener products. And those two things are taking the best of the frameworks of eco-design strategies that people are using to make products greener, and combining them with the best science available to quantify environmental performance, captured in life cycle assessment. And what we want to do is for you to be able to operationalize environmental performance in your product development and manufacturing without having to be an expert in life cycle assessment. So we have software which is online, which Ken has been using, and we have all kinds of services around that. Very exciting to work with all kinds of players in the field. You see here an overview of some customers that we're working with. You see a lot of manufacturers who are actually making stuff. We see educational facilities that are training the sustainable designers of the future, and with product consultancies. And Ken is here with us, and he's a very great example of one of those design companies that is actively using Sustainable Minds in their design practice. So Ken, I opened up your mic. Maybe it's good to present yourself to the group and go through the slide deck and tell us the story, how you use Sustainable Minds, and share some experiences there with us.
All right, well, thank you for the introduction, Joep, and thanks for having me as part of your webinar. As you mentioned, I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about our project, our eyewear project we worked on, but first I'm going to give you a little bit of background about us. I don't know if I have control of the slides right now.
I'll give them to you, Ken. No worries. Here you go.
Okay, great. So a little bit of background about us. We're a design consulting group out of St. Louis, but we primarily focus on things like strategy, innovation, and sustainability. We provide our clients with all kinds of solutions, and while we do design work, we really consider ourselves more creative problem solvers, because a lot of times we're in the trenches with intellectual stuff that isn't just design. And so it's important to us to really be considered as creative problem solvers. It's not. I'm having trouble getting it to cycle the slide again. Okay, so for some of you who might be new to life cycle assessment, there's a tool that was developed about 9 years ago called Ocala, and it's what myself and my business partner sort of grew up on when we were in school. We were learning to use this methodology, and it was similar to the principles that Sustainable Minds operates on, but it was like a workbook. So you would find your factors in the workbook, and you do all the math on paper and figure out what kind of environmental impacts were being made. So this is where we started at SIUC, because our professor at the time was one of the co-authors of the program, the Ocala program. So when we got out of school, we started our corporation in FredSparks in college still, my partners and I. And when we were starting it, we decided that sustainability was going to be an important focus for us. One, because we had the opportunity to learn about it while we were in school, but also because it gave us a chance to differentiate our services. It gave us a chance to lead in an industry. And it was something that we could feel good about, because we think conservation is important. We want to be good stewards of the environment and make the best decisions we can and help our clients do the same thing. When Sustainable Minds came out, we were some of the early adopters of Sustainable Minds also. And what I can't tell you guys how much a difference the cloud makes. I mean, going from doing our math on paper with a calculator to having a system that's integrated in the cloud that you can put your measurements into, and it does all the calculations for you, has been an amazing transition. It's no more calculations for us on paper. It updates quickly. They're always adding new material and updating content, so that stuff happens immediately instead of having to wait for the next published version of a workbook. And it allows us to quickly share our results with each other and with our clients. And it also allows us to work with Sustainable Minds because it's all on the cloud with the team. And I'll tell you more about that here in a little bit. So some of our observations and experiences since we've been working in sustainability and in design is that green is good business. I mean, all of the solutions that we've developed for our clients not only have allowed them to be more sustainable and offer more sustainable offerings to the market, but it's also every solution has saved them money. So I think that's a pretty important distinction with regard to what sustainability can do and the power that working with sustainable design has. Additionally, we worked with companies, small companies and large corporations, companies that are doing $200 million a year all the way up to $36.4 billion a year. So while the scale is different from one corporation to another, there's people and companies at all levels that are looking to sustainability and looking for sustainability in their product solutions. It's not happening at every company, but it's happening at every level, that's for sure.
Hey Ken, this is you. Can I ask you a question? Is this something that clients bring up when they hire you, or is this something that you bring to your clients? How does that work?
Well, it's a little bit of both, but a lot of times when we let our clients know what we're capable of doing for them and the solutions we can bring to the table, a lot of times being able to do sustainable design opens doors for us with clients, even if we don't do a sustainable project initially. We also find that even if we start a project with a client and it's not necessarily a sustainable project, they're open to ideas about sustainability, and they're typically impressed with the ability to provide those things. I don't know if that answers the question. So I'm going to talk about the Misura Eye Wear project here in just a second, and the things I'm going to cover: the business case, the role of Sustainable Minds, and then sort of the next steps and how Sustainable Minds is going to roll out in those steps also. So initially when we started on this project, we had some associates that we had worked with in sustainable design before. They'd seen what we were capable of doing, and they brought this idea they had, this business plan for a company called Ego Eyes, and it was going to be this sustainable eyewear company. And they wanted our help focusing their approach and helping them, develop results. And so what we did is we stepped back, as we typically do, and we sort of reevaluated the problem and redefined it by doing some research with the end users. And what we found in doing that research was that the big opportunity in eyewear for sustainability was in readers. And the reason for that was that because most people that owned readers, they owned multiple pairs because they were thought of as more disposable. They kept them all over the place. They kept them in the car. They kept them in the junk drawer. They kept them on the nightstand. They kept them on the end table. So they had them all over the place. They often lost them or broke them. So there was a lot more turnover in product, and so those products that were being lost or thrown away were driving consumption of more products, and so they were having a larger impact per person because people would own more readers. People who owned readers owned more readers, and so we refocused the project, and we decided that on initial launch, what we were going to do is we were going to focus on the reader category of eyewear. Additionally, we knew that the baby boomer population segment was the largest segment, and just because of natural aging reasons, they were more inclined to own readers. So we also looked at some other research that other people had put together, and we understood that there was a real opportunity here because 71% of consumers on some level had a commitment to buying green products. So we knew that it was a decent sized segment, but also we knew that again, looking at some other research here, that baby boomers were 1.7 to 2.1 times, so almost twice as likely to purchase green products. So we felt this sort of further emphasize that readers were going to be the right route for us to go. So some other things we were looking at as we were developing our strategy was what makes a company a sustainable company or a company with green initiatives, and how, what makes it matter, because there's so many companies out there that are they slap green or eco-friendly or all kinds of things on their packaging, but it doesn't really mean anything. So what we did is we looked at some other research, and it showed that over 50% of U.S. citizens wanted information about products right where it was sold. So that's where they wanted their information about the product. But when it came to sustainable claims and initiatives, they wanted some third-party proof or some third-party backup that data was real, and that was 63% of the population. So a pretty overwhelming amount cared about whether or not it was real green or if it was greenwashing.
Okay, Ken, do you think that that's an example of they really were interested, so they're looking at the information and they want to know more about it?
I think, well, I think what it is I think people have realized that the companies will just market anything as green to try and get a hold of consumers without actually providing any real substantial truth to whether or not that's green, or not expressing the trade-offs that existed in order to get to maybe that green material. There was a different processing of the material required, and I'll actually talk about an example of that in a little bit. There's a renewable resource called cellulose acetate that most glasses are made out of, but the processing required to process this wood pulp into a resin is actually pretty harmful for the environment. So while it's a renewable resource, and on packaging it says renewable resource, it doesn't actually mean that it's real green or it's really sustainable in comparison to other materials.
Okay.
So when we were developing the Misura brand strategy, we knew it was a given. We were gonna reduce the environmental impact. If we didn't reduce the environmental impact, then it didn't matter. We weren't going to go to market with it. But what we decided was equally as important was to be honest, to tell the truth, and then to be transparent. And I'll show you in a little bit how that rolls out. So for some of you that are familiar with LCAs or life cycle assessment, this looks familiar. For those who aren't, this is an eco-design strategy wheel. It's been adapted from Hans Perzet's model, but this is a pretty typical strategy wheel, and it's right off the Sustainable Minds website also. So the first thing we looked at were low impact materials, and what we knew is that typical plastic frames were made from a resin called cellulose acetate, and we also knew that while renewable, as I described earlier, there was a process required to turn the pulp into a resin, and so we wanted to investigate, whether or not that was actually the best way or the most sustainable way to make plastic frames or not. And additionally, because we do sustainable design and because we do product design, we're always looking for new materials and new sustainable materials. And we had gotten a hold of some samples of some different things, and they're listed here. But we didn't know, where they actually measured up. And we also knew that because some materials, while they say they're renewable, such as cellulose acetate, we didn't know, what the trade-off was going to be in processing. So we needed to know whether these materials were really going to be green materials before, or sustainable materials before we started using them for production. So we also got all these materials and we shot them with a supplier into a tool, and then we subjected them to cold, heat, pressure, tension, and different chemicals to find out which ones would be viable. And this is just some examples of the materials that we were testing.
Okay, was that because you just wanted to know, or was it because these tests are relative to the eyewear and glasses, or was the information just not available?
Well, because frames are pretty thin, the information wasn't entirely available, because some of the materials were even being used in like more industrial applications for like trash cans and deck material, and we didn't know. We had some of the data, but we didn't have all of it, and we didn't know, we knew how the material would perform as like a plank for a deck, but we didn't know how it would perform when it was, shot in a thin mold where it wasn't very large. It would have, the properties necessary in order to work as frames, because they're so thin.
Yeah, good.
So then, parallel to looking at viability from structural strength perspective, we also were looking at different frame styles and from a design perspective and what we wanted to do. And instead of reinventing the wheel, what we decided was that we would ask, we had a distribution connection at this point, and what we would do is we'd ask our distribution connection to just send us their 20 top-selling frames in 3 different categories, which were mature styles, men's fashion, and women's fashion. And from there, we down-selected to some unisex styles that could be gender neutral, and we could test the market with just a few styles at launch. One of the other design considerations that we've made here is that there's no additional like metal or printing component on the frame, so that we could cut down on using an additional material or an additional process, and we just have the branding molded into the side of the frame. Okay,
so they're all monomaterials, you're saying?
Well, you still have the metal that's required to be at the hinging points and in the leg, but right now, aside from that, aside from the lenses, there's monomaterial. So we had all these interesting materials that we had a hypothesis that they were going to be lower impact, but we didn't actually know that they were. We knew that they'd be strong enough. We knew which styles we wanted to go with, but we didn't know whether or not the materials were going to actually be sustainable. And so we knew we had to run it through Sustainable Minds. We'd done multiple projects running running things through sustainable mines, but before we could go any further, we needed to know. But because these materials were pretty exotic and pretty new, they weren't in the growing sustainable mines database, and so that didn't concern us. We weren't worried about it because in the past we'd worked with Terry, we worked with Yoop to develop custom factors, and I don't know if some of you haven't worked with them to do that sort of thing. It's a pretty easy process to work with. They're good at handling it. Youp's got tons of experience doing it, and it was as simple as a couple telephone calls and helping them connect with the people that had the information, the scientific information, and from there, once they had that, it was 2 weeks. We had our materials, which I felt like was a very reasonable turnaround. And you guys have worked with us on crazier timelines in the past, but want me to divulge that information. But
we like the 2 weeks, Ken.
yeah.
No, it's a really good example of you using the database, and the database is of course designed for certain user audiences, but we never know exactly what kind of products you're running, or if somebody in the audience would be running their own project. So what Ken is saying is that if there are custom data requests, just start a conversation with us, and sometimes it can be very quickly added to the database. And for this project with Ken, we even created impact factors for new blends and new materials. And yeah, it worked really smoothly and really well. So I'm glad we were able to do that for you, Ken.
And I'm glad you were able to do it for us too on this project and on previous projects. So, and I just had some notes here about sustainable mines, and they really are true. They're flexible, they're adaptable, very capable, and what we really enjoy is that we both have a shared vision of we develop these factors, but we want them to be public factors because the more people that have the information, the better the impact we can make on a more sustainable world.
Yeah, so what Ken is saying, just for the audience, is that we work on software as a service online, so the database is a public database. So all the database development is available to all the users. So the more projects people are doing, the more data will be fed in and become available to the user audience. So it's a really strong mechanism for growth.
So after we had the information, we had our factors, we were able to run them, and as you can see, and I hope you all can see it on your screens, we had different results ranging from a 77% reduction all the way to a 97% reduction for polymer or resin material. As a side note, and I reveal this just because I believe that the more people that are using the software, the better in general when it comes to making product decisions. But this data was run by one of our team members, and this was the first project that he ever ran it for, and it took him about 2 hours watching some tutorials and about a 2-minute conversation with me to be able to do this work. So it's very, very easy software to utilize and to learn. The strategy side is a little different. The strategy wheel, that takes some creative thinking and some creative energy and some experience, but the software is easy stuff. And here's a zoom in on the sort of the best performing material. Although we're going to utilize quite a few of them because the change was so small that the difference was so small that we're going to actually use the materials and the material textures as our colorways, so that it's just a very truth to material sort of process, and so that the user can, or the end user, the consumer, can really identify and make a statement, because a lot of times green fashion products are really about the individual wanting to express themselves as caring about the environment or being somebody that makes conscious decisions, and so we really want to stay true to material. So moving on to the strategy wheel, we're going to look at optimizing manufacturing. And I think it's going to go to the next slide. There we go. So We thought we were going to have to injection mold these, but what we found out is that we might be able to extrude them into an extruded thing, and then slice them into like these glass frame pucks, resin pucks, to work from. And we haven't run the data on that yet, but I just wanted to illustrate that when we found this information out, we right away just ran to Sustainable Minds, clicked on the screen, and we were able to see here that if you can see the extrusion over injection molding, the difference in impact of extruding is 0.069 millipoints, and injection molding is 2.03 millipoints. So it's more than, or it's less. Let's see. The reduction is more than 100% to switch materials. And while we haven't actually run it through the entire system yet, we're able to, on the front end, instead of wasting a bunch of time learning about extruding, learning whether it was actually going to work for us or not, we were right away on the front end able to decide that it wasn't something we wanted to eliminate because of environmental impact. We knew that if we could get it to work, it would make a difference, and that was that was a 30-second insight. It took us 30 seconds to find that out.
Yeah, and that's a very good example, Ken. Because what we want to do with LCA and Sustainable Minds is help you in the early design stages with exactly information like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're always using the tool early on in the design phases just to sort of focus the direction that we need to move in.
Yeah. So to the audience, if there are questions, please send them in the send questions to staff, the question tab, and we'll address them to you like I'm asking questions to Ken now. So please go ahead if you have some questions there. Thanks.
So with regard to efficient distribution, which is next on the strategy wheel, we haven't run the data, but we've done so many projects with Sustainable Minds that we know generally what the results are going to look like, and we know that manufacturing in the U.S. for more than one reason. One, we want to make these products in the United States, but also being located centrally in St. Louis on Interstate 64, running across the country and with an international airport. After running the data on other projects of what freight from Asia costs, which is the standard really in the eyewear manufacturing industry, we know that we're going to come in way under the impact from the standard manufacturing process.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because what you're doing again is learning from experiences from earlier projects and saying, well, this is basically just how we need to set up both our supply chain and hence our delivery. And I meet a lot of clients that do not open up for that because indeed all the materials are coming from China. And then the reason is it's all about cost and it's going to cost more, and then they forget about these options here. And on this webinar and this presentation, there's also a blog that we send out, and it's on our website. And one of the claims that you make that, Ken, and maybe it's good to step in there a little bit, is that you say that the projects that you've worked on sustainability have not only lowered the environmental impact, but have also decreased the cost to manufacture. And I gather in this design project, all the factors are coming together. And overall, when you combine these things, and even manufacture it here locally, it has a good return there.
Yeah,
is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. And as it happens with this project, most of the materials are manufactured in the United States too. So the raw materials that we'll be using. So the transport of material from raw manufacturer to the supplier will be a lot, won't be a high impact because it's not going to have to come from another location.
Yeah, good.
And then another thing we're looking at is we're looking at strategies to optimize the end of life. We found that this one's the trickiest probably, and it's because you have to get the consumer to buy into being sort of part of it whenever they're done with the product, and then you have to find a way to actually account for that. And since we want to be transparent and on the up and up with everyone, if we can't measure it, then we're not gonna claim it. But we are working on strategies, and what we think Sustainable Minds is going to play a key role here is that if we can measure, what the opportunity is for the end user or the consumer to participate in the end life. If we can show them the data and show how it, with a number, with quantification, how it affects the overall impact, we think that that can be used as a motivator to get them to participate in the, based on the strategies that we put forward.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly putting that right. What we usually see when clients use sustainable minds in their work about end of life, they tend to be very optimistic in terms of amount of recycled or reuse, and not so much landfill, while the current practice is, of course, mostly landfill here in the U.S. But the message is that it shows you the potential of, if we were to do it that way, if we are putting a product on the market that it's designed for disassembly and an optimized end of life, and then if we put in some efforts in place that we can stimulate the market to actually do that, what would be the benefits? And if that's worthwhile striving for from a sustainability perspective, then why wouldn't you make that a unique statement for your product positioning as well? That's exactly right, Ken. I'm glad you picked up on that.
Absolutely. So we know what our strategies are going to be, and we've got a good idea of our materials, and we know what our product's going to look like. But another piece that's important to us, and that we think that Sustainable Minds, helps us leverage is our communication strategy. Earlier I showed this slide, and what I want to point it out again is that where people want information about the products that they're purchasing with regard to global warming and sustainability and being green is right where the product's sold. They want the information there overwhelmingly, and also that they want some sort of third-party validation. They don't want someone just to source recycled material and say, now we're the new greenest product in our category. They want some sort of validation that this is true. So, back to our strategy of, we understood environmental impact reduction through the strategy wheel. We were going to nail that. And then it's important to us, again, to be honest and to be transparent. So in our communication strategy, the plan is at point of purchase to explain to them, to the consumer, what was involved in our production of the product, and then to give them a link or a route directly to what will end up being the Sustainable Minds case studies, so that they don't just have to take our word for it. They can actually see the route we took, the process that we took, and we're going to use the Sustainable Minds case studies within a layman's explanation of what's occurred, so that we can be 100% transparent, and they can call, it gives them an opportunity to call us a liar if we're a liar, or to see that we've actually taken the time to do it the right way. And then on our product packaging, we're still working on different concepts to sort of decide how we're going to message this and still streamline our packaging. But we're going to have just a simple communication that shows in three sort of areas where our product stacks up to the standard manufacturing process for plastic frame glasses, and just an easy to understand illustration, but then still connecting them back to the website so that they can get the actual data we used in order to determine that, so that way they understand what we did measure, and they also understand what we didn't measure. So Misura is the Latin for measure, Latin word for measure, and it was the company started out as Eco Eyes, but as we went through this process, we thought that the measuring component was so important and so central that we needed to bring the brand back to closer to that piece of the brand identity. And I guess the important message here at the end is that from creating factors to measuring them and using the software, without Sustainable Minds, we wouldn't have been able to make those measurements and to produce these products. So this is sort of the summary, and the problem was, can we make reading glasses more sustainable? And the result is absolutely, we can do it. And I'll turn it back over to you to feed questions if there are any.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Ken.
Thank you.
This is a great story of a company, Ken and your colleagues, working with your team and trying to answer questions like, okay, so we've been through some training with Sustainable Minds, and it's all about eco-design strategies. But eco-design strategies, like you said, renewable content doesn't necessarily have to add up to something green when you put numbers towards that. Let's then go and test that and put numbers towards that and really measure and see if we measure up. And it's fantastic how you're integrating that identity, not just in doing the homework, but also in the design and how you're going to put the product on the market.
And something else, I guess maybe I didn't point out, but it's in the blog post, is that because we were able to do this work, to think with these strategies, and to actually, we understood what it would take to get the components measured and to build the communication strategies moving forward. We were able to secure ownership in this startup. So the power of being able to measure and design sustainably has opened up an opportunity for us to own part of this brand.
Okay, well that's fantastic to hear, because that means that you are basically redefining a partnership with your clients in terms of, well, we want to work with you together, and when it relates to these types of products and trying to integrate sustainability, it's more than us just doing the work and getting in and out. It's a conversation, and it's how we want to work together.
Absolutely.
There's the question coming in from Ronald. He's asking whether there is some information already available on Misura online on the website. Is that the case, Ken, or is it still internal?
It's still internal at this point. We hope to turn that stuff live in the next 3 months, so by the beginning of the year. But and then to have product on shelves by fourth quarter. If people understand the production cycle, it takes about a year from the time you really get things rolling.
Yes, absolutely. And I think people can appreciate that. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about? So sometimes clients ask for this. Sometimes you talk to clients. How do you operationalize this in your team? Is this something you assign people to? Is this something you just start from the beginning of the project, like, hey, how can we utilize sustainability? When does it get sustainability added to the matrix of your design process?
Sure. We certainly make all of our clients know at the beginning of every project that there's an opportunity to utilize this. For some clients, it's more important than it is for other clients. Typically, a little bit of it goes on, regardless of whether it's specifically asked for. We take the time to make some considerations, and also, as you know, as you pointed out earlier, because we've learned by using the process, we know some things, and we're able to just make decisions or make suggestions, at least recommendations, without even having to go to Sustainable Minds. Sometimes, if the client isn't asking for data to be produced, just because of the lessons we've learned by using the software. So yeah, it's always on the front end. Some clients ask for it specifically. Some clients it doesn't matter one way or another to them whether we come up with the solutions. But internally, 90% of the team knows how to use the software, integrate the software, and then everybody knows how to use the strategies.
Okay, yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, and that's exactly what needs to be happening. The idea of the eco-design strategy wheel, if you're going to be using that most innovation will happen when you look at multiple life cycle phases and when you apply multiple strategies together. And that's where you really start to create new things. And I think what you showed us today is a very awesome introduction to using the strategy wheel and going beyond the step of, okay, well, we're designing, so let's focus on materials. Now you said, well, which of these phases are actually applicable to eyewear, and how can we maximize, at least take into account all the learnings that we can get there. I'd like to thank you for your presentation, Ken. I think it was wonderful. If there's still questions in the audience, please keep sending them, no problem. What I will do the next 10 minutes is just wrap up by giving you some examples of how we work with clients. And we're not only giving you software, because software is just a tool. All of this around sustainable thinking, lifecycle thinking, environmental performance, driven product innovation is a process, it's a culture, it's a workflow. So it's about you, how you wins. Let me show you a bit about some of the services that we have. We'll leave it with that. If you want to sign up for Sustainable Minds, you can start with a free trial for a month online. But we have single user subscriptions, and we have multi-user packages. And like Ken already said, if you start working with Sustainable Minds, you're bound to be looking for some data because you're doing different types of projects. And if you sign up for multi-user accounts, then some of the data development is just included there. Everything that we develop in the software, in content and database updates is included in these packages. So we'd love to do that. Now, like I said, it's not just a tool. We have lots of support services. Some of the things we do is we can help you get set up with some of the projects that you're doing. We can review projects you set up. We can help you define data requirements. We can look at how you use the results or how you should read the results. And sometimes we do that with just one person who really wants to become proficient in using Sustainable Minds. But usually that involves also a team, because this is usually a team effort, and you'll be working together on these types of projects, and we want you to be able to work as a team. So lots of our training and lots of our assistance is also focusing on you working. Now, the tool is only as good as the database, so we are continuously developing our data. And for the eyewear project for Ken, we developed some data with some renewable content, some secondary content, made some blends with some plastics. Your projects, you will have different data requirements. And when you start using Sustainable Minds and you don't find a material you're looking for, then that shouldn't be our process that you're applying to make the product. And that shouldn't bog you down. That should be a call to touch base with support and see whether we can get that data in. Because there's lots of data out there. We have to prioritize our efforts too. If there's public data available, we can create that with a generic impact factor. But we also develop all kinds of custom data impact factors. And a really good example of that is a collaboration that we have with a Spartech company. They service as a technology innovation center for different manufacturers in the region around St. Louis. And they said, well, all the projects that we're doing with our clients, just like Ken, we want to integrate some kind of measuring of sustainability. And they sign up with us, sign off on a partnership, and they're going to use it for all their product development, just to get the benchmarks, just to get to know and understand the language of sustainability and what numbers come up and show up. And one of the things we did is we looked at the customer base that they have, and see what materials they're interested in, what additives they need, and we augmented the database with a pretty big update that just recently became available. So it's about working together. It's about you getting the most out of Sustainable Minds, but it's usually based on a conversation with us, just helping you get started and get set up, so you indeed can get the most out of Sustainable Minds. Now, everything is in the cloud, so we share everything. But if there's a need for proprietary data sets, we can set up a private SaaS. So that's not a problem. You just have to touch base with our technical people, and we can set that up for you. If there are good reasons for it, then that's reason enough for us to be able to develop that for you. We do a lot of training, because what is the eco-design strategy wheel? What's the language of sustainability? How do you measure environmental impact? We saw all kinds of numbers in different slides, and where are those numbers coming from? What do they mean? So we can help you with web-based training, on-site training, help you get started with some pilot projects. We do audit and benchmark programs for reference products, and we can help you get set up with a project review. And this is really good. Here's where we're actually working with your team to develop the competence and knowledge, not just using the tool, but around the thinking. And Ken showed us a really good story about how the eco-design strategy wheel, if you look at different life cycle phases, gives you information on trying to find improvements. And I think it was fantastic to see that. The one thing that we sell the most is what we call the web-based training, and that's what you see here. So if you sign up, you want to do your first project, you want to utilize it as a learning experience for your team as well. And then this is what it is. We do web-based training with your project manager or your core LCA eco-design person. We'll set up a reference and we'll teach you the fundamentals of eco-design, and then we do a redesign of the project together during the second day. This is fantastic because then the results are tailored and catered to your needs, and the results are actually applicable in your atmosphere, in your work sphere. Now, I think that's it for today. I didn't see any more questions come in. A few more questions on slides. We'll address them afterwards. With that, I'd like to thank you all for your attendance. Next week we'll run a webinar related to packaging and logistics, so and also a dedicated webinar. Thank you so much again, Ken. This was wonderful having you here. Please check back with us, and we will have more clients after customer webinars available to you. With that, well, thank you for your attendance, and we hope to hear from you soon. Well, thank you, Ken. Thank you all for attending.